of all the faiths, it is only Christianity that says that God is not up there, that God seeks to come right here and be with us. And indeed, the prophet Isaiah speaks of a time when God will come, make every tear dry, and wipe away the heartache of this world, and that there will be a new world and a new peace. Many people will come and say, "Come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, so that we may walk in his paths. The law will go out from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he will judge between the nations, and he will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Come, descendants of Jacob, and let us walk in the light of the Lord." Nobody thought that the death of one man would result in the death of millions. Nobody thought that the death of one man would cause a nation hundreds of miles away across an entire ocean to sacrifice 65,000 of its young men and women. But it did. On Sunday, June 28th, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was shot and killed by a Serbian nationalist during the visit to Sarajevo in Bosnia. Convinced that the Serbian government was involved in the plot, Austria-Hungary, supported by Germany, sent a harsh ultimatum to Serbia. And although Serbia met every demand, Austria-Hungary declared war anyway. Russia, the self-proclaimed protector of the Slav nation, mobilized its troops. Germany demanded promises of peace from Russia and France, and when there was no answer, declared war on Russia on August 1st, and then on France 2 days later. France looked to Britain for support. Although Britain was not bound by a formal treaty to join France in war, Sir Edward Grey, the Foreign Secretary at the time, had made an informal agreement with the French. Then, on August 4th, the German army, on its way to France, invaded neutral Belgium. Britain sent an ultimatum demanding withdrawal of German troops and reminding Germany of the Treaty of 1838, guaranteeing Belgium's neutrality, to which Prussia, effectively the predecessor of Germany, was also a signatory. This went unanswered. The ultimatum expired at midnight on August 4th, and now Britain was at war. Canada wasn't an independent nation at the time. It had to follow Britain's lead. When Sir Wilfrid Laurier addressed the nation, he proclaimed, "It is our duty to let Great Britain know, and to let the friends and foes of Great Britain know, that there is in Canada but one mind and one heart, and that all Canadians are behind her mother country." Prime Minister Robert Borden, calling for a supreme national effort, offered Canadian assistance to Great Britain. The offer was accepted, and Canada was at war. With a regular army of only 3,110 men and a fledgling navy, Canada was ill-prepared to enter a world conflict. Yet from Halifax to Vancouver, thousands of young Canadians answered the nation's call. Within a few weeks, more than 32,000 men gathered at Valcartier camp near Quebec City. And within 2 months, the first contingent Canadian Expeditionary Force was on its way to England in the largest convoy ever to cross the Atlantic Ocean. In the beginning, there was a spirit of light-hearted optimism and exuberant enthusiasm. It would be exciting. It would make a man out of you. It would be good for business, and the boys would be home by Christmas. Those were all the slogans. And yet those who said those slogans did not realize that 4 years of death and destruction lay ahead in a war the likes no one had ever seen before. For the first time in history, man's flesh, blood, and courage went up against the mass use of high explosive shells, rapid-firing machine guns, poison gas, mighty dreadnoughts, stealthy submarines, and even death from the sky in airplanes. Yet into the conflict our young men went. They stood fast at Ypres, stormed the Regina Trench, climbed the heights of Vimy Ridge, captured Passchendaele, and entered Mons on November 11th, 1918. More than 650,000 men and women from Canada and Newfoundland served. Over 10% gave their lives. And if you're wondering what that means, that is the literal definition of decimation. Over 10% gave their lives, and more than 172,000 were wounded. On the 11th hour of the 11th day and of the 11th month, an armistice was signed to end World War I. The horrendous casualties, military and civilian, suffered by both sides spurred efforts to forever put an end to war. As such, King George V, in 1919, inaugurated and presided over the very first Remembrance Day service, so that the First World War would in fact be the war to end all wars. With the benefit of history, we know that this was not to be the case. Peace has been hard to maintain, with the world engaging in yet another larger world war and being brought to the brink of others many times. It seems that each generation has to learn the lessons of evil, hatred, and violence on its own. But if every generation has to learn these lessons of evil, hatred, and violence and war for itself, they also need to learn the consequences of it. It is for this very reason that we need to gather. It is for this very reason that we need to remember. For a person who does not remember his own history is condemned to repeat it. We see these soldiers in our minds of these old wars, as old, perhaps broken by the weight of years. But when they answered our nation's call, they were young. Many were boys too young who lied about their age so that they could serve. And when they died, when they gave up their lives for their country and family, they really gave up two lives. The ones that they were living and the ones they never got a chance to live. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands, to be fathers, to be grandfathers. They gave up the chance to grow old, enjoy the freedoms that they helped protect, and become revered old men. They gave up everything for our country. They gave up everything for us. And all we can do is give thanks and remember them. And there is someone always remembering them. There is always somebody on that black watch, No matter what time of year it is, no matter what time of day, there's always someone coming to a cenotaph or to a military cemetery to remember the names, perhaps leave a flag, shed a tear, and say a prayer. We need to remember those left behind by war. Numbers can be clear and plain. They can tell you who lost and who won. They can tell you how many died, how many lived, how many were wounded. But they don't tell the full story of war. For every soldier lost, there is a mother and father that have to bury a son, who remember laying their baby gently in their crib, even as they watch the coffin being gently lowered into the ground. They remember holding a hand, or perhaps hugging a child so dearly, even as now they hug that tightly folded flag. For every soldier lost, there is a family that is broken. There is a wife who will have to go to bed alone. There is a son who will never again be tucked into bed or being taken fishing. There is a daughter who will not have her father to walk her down the aisle when she is married. There will be a Christmas stocking that will never be filled. A chair at the Thanksgiving table that will always be empty. Even those who do come home do not come home the same men or women who left. Many seriously wounded soldiers live the tragedy both in their body and in their spirit, well beyond the end of the war. War injuries impact a family in every way possible. Medical treatments and medications might be required for a lifetime. Their injury might impair their ability to find employment or even their ability to work. The healthy spouse might now be required to be a permanent caregiver. It might leave our vet in chronic or constant pain for the rest of her life. And this is just the people who are broken of body. More and more we see people broken of spirit. In Canada, it's estimated that up to 10% of war zone veterans, including war service veterans and peacekeeping forces, will go on to experience a chronic condition known as post-traumatic stress disorder, while others may experience at least some of the symptoms associated with the condition. The most commonly associated problems in PTSD are those related to anxiety, depression, alcohol, or drug use. And these can be very disabling to the person suffering from them, as well as their family members and co-workers. Vets with PTSD often lose interest or pleasure in activities that they once enjoyed. For them, life becomes flat and gray, and nothing seems fun, exciting, or enjoyable anymore. These depressed states can be very intense, leading to a total withdrawal from others and a state of numbness. Or they can be of lower intensity, just like feeling down in the dumps. They may last for as little as a few hours, or as long as months or even years. In more severe cases, the person may believe that life is no longer worth living. PTSD can directly affect a veteran's family life on all kinds of levels. A veteran with PTSD usually has a problem expressing emotions. For example, love and enthusiasm. This may lead to family or friends to feel like they're being pushed away or rejected. This in turn can leave the sufferer feeling isolated and unloved. Quite often this leads to reduced participation in family activities and hobbies. This makes it difficult to have a normal family life, and it leaves the other spouse with the full burden of running the family. In some cases, a great deal of time is spent focusing on the veteran's problem at the expense of the partner's needs. The vet gets treatment for his or her problems, but the rest of the family gets ignored. In an attempt to cope with the unpleasant symptoms, many people turn to alcohol or other drugs. Around 50% of males and 25% of females with chronic PTSD have major problems with alcohol and drugs. The figures for veterans are even higher. Drug and alcohol abuse causes great difficulties in the areas of relationships, work, finances. They can cause violent behavior. Over a period of time, these problems compound and get worse. What follows next is often separation and divorce. Jesus once said, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." When the war is over, we must remember those who bravely answered the call and served our nation. And we must answer their call for help and serve them. For now, it is our turn. And finally, we have to remember why they fought. Because there are some things so valuable that they are worth fighting for. Our freedom is worth fighting for. Our values are worth fighting for. Our liberty is worth fighting for. Our children are worth fighting for. And their future is worth fighting for. And if you don't believe me, look at all the people trying to become Canadian or American citizens. They want what we have. Freedom is never free. It comes at a cost. I sometimes think of General Matthew Ridgway, who on the night before D-Day tossed sleeplessly in his cot, and he talked to the Lord and he listened for the promise God made to Joshua. God said to Joshua, "I will not fail thee, nor will I forsake thee." And in the midst of war, God did not. I sometimes think of John Bernard Croak, a World War I hero from Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, my hometown. He was killed in combat, but in Private Croak's pocket was found a Bible. And on the inside cover of this Bible, Croak had written in his own words, "Good must win this war. Therefore I will work, and I will save, and I will fight, and I will sacrifice, and I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost, as if the whole issue of this struggle depended on me alone." Private Croak gave all that he had. We owe our veterans a debt to which we cannot repay. All we can do is remember them. Remember what they did. Remember those left behind by war. And remember why they had to be brave for us. All we can do is try to see that other brave men and women never have to hear that kind of call from their nation ever again. Today, as never before, we must remember our veterans, their sacrifices, and the sacrifices of their families made and continue to make, so that we will work harder to maintain peace. Today, as never before, we must pray for God's help to broaden and deepen the peace that we all now enjoy. Let us pray for freedom, for justice, and security of person, where all men are created free, and our world is a more stable place to be. Today, the day after Remembrance Day, the day farthest away from the next time we gather to remember, let us renew our pledge to those who fought and died, to those who fought and lived, and to those who continue to serve. Let us make a pledge, the same pledge that General Matthew Ridgway, when he looked to God and heard the words, I will not fail thee, I will not fail thee, nor will I forsake. We must realize that no arsenal or weapon is as formidable as the will and the moral courage of free men and women. So let us also realize that peace is the greatest treasure that we can leave our legacy. We as a nation have negotiated for it. We have sacrificed for it. We have fought for it. But we have never surrendered it. So let us not forget the sacrifices of men like John Bernard Crowe. And let us fight just as hard for peace, so that our children and grandchildren will not have to go to war. How can we do that? Well, it was summed up in the words for the day that we all said together. Tell your children about it in the years to come. And let your children tell their children. Pass the story down from generation to generation, lest we forget. To which I can only say, thanks be to God, and amen. Just bow our minds and hearts just for a quick moment in prayer. Loving God, we ask that you be with the families and friends of those who have served our nation. For those who saw their children come home, but changed and broken. Be with those who came home and saw the world, their world and home had changed and struggled to find their place. Be with those who grieved for their son or daughter who did not come home. Be with those who have taken their own life through suicide because they couldn't handle what was left afterwards. Be with those men and women who still serve. Be their shield. Be their strength. Be with those who still wait and wonder and hope that mom or dad comes home. Be with our Prime Minister and be with those who govern this great nation. Bless them with peace and wisdom, courage and strength. And bless this nation, who is a beacon of freedom and hope and values, to which we can only say, these are the prayers of your people, O Lord. O Lord, hear our prayers. Amen.